Coming up this hour, what is the complete story of the Lord Jesus? Dr. John MacArthur will join me and talk about his new book, One Perfect Life. Plus, Southern Baptists have passed a resolution on child sex abuse victims. Pastor Peter Lumpkins wrote the resolution. He'll be here to talk about it. That and more next on The Janet Mefferd Show. Welcome back, 17 past the hour. As you know, I have been very concerned about the issue of sexual abuse and evangelicalism, particularly as it has occurred against children. And this is, of course, a very timely issue at the moment because of the ongoing legal action regarding Sovereign Grace Ministries and a number of defendants from that church body who are accused of conspiring to cover up and even discouraging the reporting of the sexual abuse of children. There's a motion for reconsideration on the whole case before a judge right now. But something really remarkable occurred on the issue last week at the annual Southern Baptist Convention in Houston. Messengers there overwhelmingly approved, a sex abuse resolution. And joining us now is the man who submitted the resolution as well as an amendment to it, Pastor Peter Lumpkins. He's a blogger and author and also pastor of Cornerstone Baptist Chapel in Waco, Georgia. And he is joining us now to talk about what happened and where Southern Baptists will go from here on the issue of the sexual abuse of children in the church. And it's just great to have you here, Pastor Lumpkins. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you, Janet. It's a pleasure to be on your show today. Thank you so much.
I appreciate your being here, and I know that this has been a big issue for you. For those who have not been up to speed on what's been going on at the Southern Baptist Convention, what was it that brought about your placing this resolution before the Resolutions Committee at the SBC?
Yeah, interesting. About mid-May, as long about the 15th or so, I actually read the second amended class action complaint and jury demand that was filed by the attorneys representing the plaintiffs in the class action lawsuit against C.J. Mahaney, Sovereign Grace Ministries, 2 Sovereign Grace churches, I think, 1 school, and at least 10 other Sovereign Grace Ministry leaders. I got about two-thirds of the way through that lawsuit, and I just closed it. I couldn't finish it,
right, because
it was so horrendous, and the magnitude of the stories behind that it was like a switch that flipped in me, and I knew we had to do something about this. And so just a day later, I think it was, I'd never presented a resolution before on the Southern Baptist Convention floor. I'd never spoken on the floor of the Southern Baptist Convention. But I thought, if this is not an issue that we need to address, nothing is. Right. And so I penned a resolution, submitted it just in the nick of time, really, before the deadline closed for resolutions, and it was received by the Resolutions Committee in time, and it was also considered. And then after the vetting of it, language was polished up and so forth. That always happens. The committee's made up of several people, and out came the resolution. And so that's part of the process. But it was really, Janet, the reading of that lawsuit that was a huge part of this thing that just pushed me. We've got to do something here. And also factored into that was last year I think, Sovereign Grace Ministries had actually moved their headquarters to Louisville, Kentucky, in part to be close to one of our seminaries, actually our flagship seminary at Southern Baptist, the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary.
Right,
now,
right.
There's no, to my knowledge, there's no official partnerships with Sovereign Grace Ministries, but there's surely some unofficial partnerships going on in interns, ministry, church planning, and so forth. And besides that, of course, Dr. Moeller is very close friends with C.J. Mahaney, and he also co-founded with C.J. Mahaney and Mark Deaver and I think Dr. Duncan the Together for the Gospel conference ministry.
Right. So there's some friendships there, and there's some crossover there. Right.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. There was a resolution I know that the SBC had passed back in 2007 on the issue of protecting children from sexual abuse in the church. What is the substantive difference between what was passed in 2007 and what they passed last week in Houston?
Yeah. Well, actually, the 2007, and then there was one where I think it was 2002, where we actually passed one, but it particularly cited ministers. It was just trying to call for ministerial integrity and so forth. But the difference in the one in 2007 and the one that I proposed last week, actually both of those are strong. The one in 2007, I think, as many resolutions do, Janet, in Southern Baptist polity, they just get forgotten. They're put out there and nothing is done with them. And one of the things that I've committed myself to on this is this is a good step for us, especially in light of what's been going on in the evangelical church, particularly with this scandal in Sovereign Grace Ministries,
right?
Our alleged scandal in Sovereign Grace Ministries, and I'm simply not going to let this die. I'm already right now making plans. I've got connections in several states that's going to be passing either the same resolution or a similar resolution at the state convention level.
Great.
Happens in October, November, December of this year, somewhere in there. They're kind of spread out. Each state has its own date and time that they usually have their state conventions. But already I've got 5 states that's agreed that this resolution or one similar to it is going to be proposed at the state level, and hopefully by fall I'll have at least 15 states that's going to be passing this, and that's something that I think that's unprecedented.
It is. It is. Well, and this is why a lot of people were just blown away. The Southern Baptist Convention passed this resolution, including this amendment that you had added in about encouraging all denominational leaders and employees of the SBC to utilize the highest sense of discernment in affiliating with groups or individuals that possess questionable policies and practices in protecting children from criminal abuse. I mean, that has some teeth to it that I think people are really, at least people who have been concerned about the issue of sexual abuse inside the church, are really glad that the SBC said, yeah, we'll get behind it. And for those who aren't Southern Baptists who are listening right now, this is the largest evangelical denomination in the country. I think for the Southern Baptist Convention to pass a resolution of this type gives me hope, Pastor Lumpkins, because I've been looking across Google for a number of years, and you just type in pastor sex abuse or child, and I am just mortified at how many stories will come up. It is about time that the SBC did something this strong. I'm so pleased to see this.
Yeah, and I'm very pleased too. And like I say, we're gonna try to use this momentum that we have. And you mentioned the amendment. Interestingly, one of the things, and this always takes place. It's the nature of resolutions in our convention polity. They're vetted, and sometimes, the original resolution that's submitted is not anything like what actually comes out. And to my disappointment in what the committee actually brought to the floor of the convention, it had gutted one paragraph in my original resolution, which called for accountability for our denominational employees and convention employees. That was gone.
Wow.
So that was behind the putting the amendment. I wanted to put it back in there, and that's what spawned the amendment. It was taken out, and I want to put it back in.
Yeah.
And overwhelmingly, the convention floor approved that, putting that back in there. And I think more than ever, especially in light of, I think it was a week or 10 days after I had proposed that I was going to submit this resolution that could have been 2 weeks. I'm not sure exactly the date, but Together for the Gospel and the Gospel Coalition wrote supportive. They wrote supportive statements concerning their friend and colleague C.J. Mahaney.
Right.
And in light of those statements, that was needed even more because, again, so many people will take our high-profile leaders like this. I mean, it's common knowledge. No one ultimately speaks for Southern Baptists. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. We are a convention of independent churches, 46,000 of them.
Right, autonomous.
And, yes, autonomous. And that throws a whole another layer of complication when you're trying to set policy. Or it's just virtually impossible to do in our polity the way our free church tradition is forged to have any type of hierarchical polity enforced upon all the churches because of our belief in the local church autonomy. There are ways to get around that, and I've talked to several individuals who know exactly what to do, who've been in convention life. They spent their life in it, and I'm exploring ways now to see what we can do as far as policy goes.
Good.
To get around that particular tenet of our ecclesiology, of the autonomy of the local church. I mean,
that's right. I mean, that's important because you have autonomy as local Southern Baptist congregations, but it's a blight upon not just the Southern Baptist Convention, I think, but a blight on the testimony of the gospel of Jesus Christ. If the world is looking at anybody, not necessarily the SBC, but any church body and saying, wow, there's abuse going on and the church doesn't really seem to be doing a whole lot about it. Now, this is a great step. I think this is just a great step to say we're going to head in the direction of loving our neighbor, protecting our children, making sure that we deal with this in an appropriate way and make sure that we go to law enforcement if there's any credible accusation of abuse.
Yeah, precisely. We've got to go down that we've got to show ourselves not just as a pretense or as public image or anything like that, but because it's right to do. It's right for us to sympathize with victims and not be perceived, and in reality, not just protect our leaders. I mean, no one wants to have knee-jerk reactions or anything like that. But we've got a terrible perception that we sympathize with celebrity people.
Yep.
We try to protect.
I got to leave it there. I'm so sorry, Pastor Lumpkins. Thanks for joining us. I'm out of time, but I really appreciate your being with us. God bless. We'll be right back.